So could please get Quinton, Adrian and Tom onto the stage, please. Thank you. So we've got a question from the crowd.
Yeah, thank you everyone. Fantastic conference. Larissa Taylor from Perth, Sustainability Consultant. I might kick off with Ben if I may. Ben, what percentage of the agri-food supply chain in Australia do you think is prepared for mandatory climate risk disclosure, which starts next year? And will you partner with companies who aren't on the front foot? Thanks.
I'm not sure what percentage are. Marissa, you will know better than I would. I'm not sure the percentage is going to be that high, not as high as it should be, which is why we're trying to help our grower customers get organised and understand the needs of our end-use customers and our own requirements, by the way. I didn't talk a lot about our scope 1 and 2 and our processing and our reporting requirements and disclosures that are coming. So I'll just be honest with you and say I don't know the percentage. I'd love to know what you think the percentage is. You're an expert in the field. The second question was, would we partner with companies that aren't on the, what was that? That aren't prepared?
Will you preference partnering with companies who are on the front foot with their transition planning?
It's a good question. I'm not really sure how to answer, Rissa. I mean, our customers that are extremely proactive, either with their goals, systems, reporting, plans, of course we're partnering with those customers. But I think, as a general rule, you've got to meet people where they are. And so it's a little bit to my point. Some of our growers that are looking at certification and they're interested in baselining but don't quite understand it. They're in a very different place from our growers that have already got their certification, already got their baseline in place, already using new technology. But we want to meet growers where they are because we want to scale. We don't want to just pick one segment and run pilots. In fact, I'm tired of putting out press releases about pilots. I want to talk, not even in press release form, about scale. And so you've got to meet the growers where you are, as distinct from plug-and-play models, including, to be frank, plugging and playing models from North America, which will not work in Australia, as this audience well knows. So I'm not sure if I would say we would prioritise people on the front foot. Of course, we'll focus on them, but we want all ships to rise, which is going to mean working with a lot of people, including some people that are sceptical about this at the moment, and have those. And there's big education and awareness role in the industry as well, which I'm sure we're all playing.
Thank you for your question. Is there any more in the crowd? John Soletto.
Just like a question for Quinton, getting back to your growth through the cycles. Where you put the broiler tonnage up, Quinton, there was no growth, and you said that part of that was genetic based. But the other one would also be, would it the improvement in feed conversion that's taking place in the industry?
That's correct, John. So, over time, through diet optimization, through genetics and welfare of the poultry farming systems, we've seen a reduction in the amount of feed required to deliver a kilogram of chicken. So that is a long-standing trend, and we're supporting that growth. Ultimately, if our customers are becoming more competitive because of that, and the growth of chicken consumption continues to grow as a result of its competitiveness, yes, there will be that growth. So within our 2 to 3% per annum feed expectations and what was delivered prior to us having this genetic constraint, we've continued to grow despite that efficiency in the feed conversion ratio.
Quinton, maybe just on the topic of poultry, there was the avian flu outbreak recently last week. Just how are you seeing that now, and what are the biosecurity measures you guys have in place to take control of that?
Great, thanks, Max. Yeah, very topical. So a week ago, the Victorian Chief Veterinary Officer gazetted that they had found H7N9 at a farm, a layer farm in Meredith, and so that farm was quarantined, and there's a 5 kilometre restrained zone. They've subsequently tested significantly across Victoria and found a different strain in a layer farm just outside of Terang in the Western Districts. And so that too has been quarantined, and there's a 5 kilometre control radius around that. Since those two, they continue to test, and as of this point in time, they haven't found any other incidents of avian influenza. So, every day that passes is a good thing for the sector, as obviously this is a high risk aspect for us. So from an internal controls point of view, as I mentioned in my talk, we have monogastric mills and ruminant mills. So number one, mitigation. Secondly, we have controls in terms of segregation within our facilities. We have controls over transport. We have escalated with wheel washers and footbaths and all the other practices. So for our business, biosecurity is sort of core to what we do. So our response has just matched that, and we're obviously avoiding all exclusion zones. We're working closely with our poultry customers to isolate deliveries, and this is both incoming raws as well as outgoing raws, so outgoing feed. So across our business, we're as prepared as we can be for this, and as I say, every day that goes by without any further incidents, hopefully that risk is contained.
Just that's a quick question if I can do here, Max.
Yeah, go for it.
Just a question for Tom and Adrian. We hear about the 16 measures of sustainability out of the United Nations, but we hear probably 90% about carbon emissions. So I'm wondering, when you do your baselining and your discussion with your clients, how are you comparing and contrasting across the different factors when really the public is looking at one number?
Yeah, it's a really good question, and thanks for that. And look, I think you're right. There is really an initial focus, rightly or wrongly, on carbon footprint and baselining, and there's no doubt that's where the conversation starts. I think opportunity is going to come, and we already see it to have a more holistic conversation. I think that will happen. I think we see it happening in some parts, but for the most part, you're getting this real interest in what are the solutions. Like the baselining is happening, it's been mentioned a few times, and I think there's a level of understanding out in the market about that. But what is coming to market? So what is already there, but what is coming? And the pipeline is really exciting. It really is, whether it is biologics, biostimulants, biocontrol, biofertilizers, there's a range of things that can make a difference. Nitrogen control products and mechanisms as well. The pipeline is there, value pools are being created, and I think it's natural that conversation's going to go in that direction. But I think you're quite right, a more holistic conversation is necessary, it will happen, it's starting to happen. I don't know, Tom, if you want to add to that.
Maybe, Tom, I can add a little bit more, because there's a request for information, I think, on the taxonomy of sustainability. I think Larissa and Natasha will know a lot more about this, but there are some larger companies like yourselves to put in some input as to what the green ledger will be. So I'm interested in all the work that you've done, how you're going to I suppose, translate that from the 100,000 farmers to the ledger that you have to sort of bring together, which looks pretty tough, like a Rubik's Cube to me.
I probably don't have an answer to that, but I think our focus is more on what's actually going to motivate and drive the change. And so I think you've made some really excellent points this afternoon around actually motivating growers to make those change. And if you do it in a cone of sustainability without thinking about the commercial outcomes, you're going to fail. No one's going to adopt. But the beauty of sustainability, the beauty of soil health is we know that if you adopt initiatives to accelerate soil health, you then accelerate productivity, which then means you're more profitable. So we can do it conjunctionally. We can actually achieve this together. But what we need to do is actually educate the market on the ability to do that. That's what's going to drive it. Our Australian growers are fantastic and they have a sustainability mindset, but at the end of the day, they will not adopt things if it doesn't mean that they're commercially viable. And so we need to adopt the two. The other thing is obviously regulation and pushing regulation. It's going to be interesting to see where that goes. To give you guys a real life example, up recently in far north Queensland, spending a bit of time with one of our agronomists based out of Ayr in the Burdekin big sugarcane production region. We're working closely with a biologicals producer up there to try to introduce that into the market because of the reef runoff regulation is ahead of where everyone else is. So it's a really good example of where regulation can speed up change in terms of reduction of nitrogen-based fertilisers and a move towards other products. And we've been partnering with a biologicals provider. We've been doing trials with CSIRO to test it out and improve it and give the growers the data and the comfort they need to adopt this new technology. We've then had a few early adopters who have then actually demonstrated that this works. It makes their farms more productive, more healthy, more profitable, and then you get the contagion effect after that. And that's where I think Nutrien and elders and other independent agronomists can play a real role in accelerating adoption of those types of things. It needs to be commercial, but also it's going to be interesting to see if regulation can speed up and accelerate that adoption as well.
I think.
Thanks. I just think it's a really good question, Paul. That's all. All I would say is that this is an opportunity for Australia. Not sure working for a global company. I'm not really supposed to be advocating for any particular country, but I am the country representative for Australia. So just give me 30 seconds. This is an opportunity for Australia because in other parts of the world, and I just recently got back from living in the States, there is such a big focus on carbon. But as you know, we've got a water market here. Many people do not have that experience in water markets. There's a biodiversity market being developed. Now, there's pros and cons about that. I'm not going to have a view on whether it's perfectly set, but my point is biodiversity markets, water markets, carbon markets, certification, landscape, we can understand that and we can lead in that. And we should be investing capital in that in Australia to make sure we're leading in that.
Got a question over here, Paul.
Thanks, Paul. Kate Burke from Think Agri in Victoria. All four brands up the front here are very trusted brands with the growers that either buy from or supply to you. Growers at the moment are feeling a little bit under pressure and demonised by the broader society as the 2% of the population that manage 55% of the land base and feel like they're having to carry the load of impending sustainability and social licence. That's pretty scary, and when people are fearful, they're not necessarily rational. How are you supporting growers, and what role are you playing in sort of managing the dis and misinformation that the broader society are hearing about agriculture?
Yeah, thanks for that. Terrific question. So let me just make a couple of comments and happy for anyone on the panel to add. But I think that is something that we're very conscious of, I think is the first thing we'll say. It's a very real prospect that having a united voice in the market that represents growers, and there are a few bodies out there that play that role and play it really well, I will say, but having a united voice and having a sense of collaboration in the market on this topic is incredibly important. Leaving growers to fend for themselves on topics like this will not work, and you can see some of the frustration that causes. So we've got a role to play as trusted brands, and there are many others in this room that play an important role, but finding ways to collaborate with each other, educate, have a meaningful voice, and then start to talk about what the future looks like, start to talk about solutions, start to talk about the pathway. Education has been a big focus so far. There's been a big effort around why are we here, what are we looking at, what does the regulation landscape look like? But we're very rapidly moving towards, well, what are the targets, how do we get there, what's the pathway, what are the solutions, and how can we collaborate as an industry and as a collective group of trusted brands to bring those solutions and represent our customers, represent farmers. So yeah, hopefully that gives a little bit of insight, but if anyone wants to add anything.
All I would say is it's a great point, but how on earth are people that have got an expectation or have that negative connotation in the community, how on earth are we going to meet these global sustainability challenges and food security challenges if you're not working constructively with the people that are managing the land and water? You're not going to do it. So we face that, and it's an excellent point, because we know that there's some people in the community, NGOs and others, that would seek to demonise agriculture. Don't demonise us. It's a cliche, but I don't know of a truer statement that agriculture is part of the solution or part of the problem. And we need to continue to advocate strongly for it, exactly as you say.
Yeah, I would just add that, some of that is our own perception. I would say we don't have to feel demonised. This is a spotlight on our sector. It's putting us right at the front, allocation of capital and all the other opportunities that come out of being in the spotlight. So let's change that narrative and let's lean into it.
Is there any more questions from the crowd? If not, we'll move to morning tea as it just says hit 10:20. Got a question?
Thank you very much. Good morning. Thank you for all the insightful discussions. My name is Elias Moshe. I'm the High Commissioner for Zambia. And my question is definitely related to Africa and several other countries. Africa is very peaceful. It's Australia's neighbor across the ocean. African demographics are that we are likely to be the youngest demographic in the coming decades, if not a century. Land and soil is very similar to Australia, and it offers huge market. I know that some of the brands here are in Africa. I think Cargill is. And so I wanted to find out, are you thinking about Africa? Are you thinking about investing there? Are you thinking about bringing some of this great technology to Africa so that we can create this sustainable future together, together as one? Thank you.
Well, thanks for the question, sir. I know with our business in Africa is important to Cargill. I also know from my discussions with some of our top of the house leadership how passionate they are about Africa. I'm not an expert myself on all of our specific business arrangements, except to say, when I think about sustainability and doing more with less, and some of the climate challenge and efficiency and technology and innovation and resilience, nowhere would seem more apparent to learn and share in human capital, and I'm sure we are through our education and scientific sector, let alone ESG capital in Africa. So it's a point well made, and not the Africa expert within Cargill, but I can certainly afterwards link you with someone that knows much more about it than I do, and it's a point well made.
I think that's it, guys. We'll move to morning tea. We've got tea and coffee outside and also some food. Thank you. And thanks, Ben. Thanks, Quinton. Thanks, Adrian and Tom.